I'm a 30-year-old man with an older brother, Caleb, who's 33, and we've never seen eye to eye. Our relationship has always been strained, and I doubt it'll ever improve. Sadly, my parents have always favored Caleb, their golden child, simply because he was well-behaved as a kid. I don't see how that's relevant now, considering he's a gambling addict who cares little for anyone, including our parents. 3 years ago, he cut off all contact with us after embezzling funds from the family business to settle his personal debts. Instead of pressing charges, my parents quietly let him go and swept the whole thing under the rug, as if it never happened. I stepped in to salvage the company, which was in ruins because of him. I hold a business degree, but had no interest in working for the family business initially, knowing I'd be under Caleb's shadow. After he vanished, I saw an opportunity to eventually take over, so I left my job to help my dad rebuild. My dad showed his gratitude by announcing at a family dinner a few weeks ago that Caleb, who had just returned, would inherit the business when he retires. This dinner was thrown to celebrate Caleb's comeback, despite his past actions. I have no idea why they welcomed him back so warmly. I thought they were naive, but I didn't expect their decision to impact the business, so I stayed silent. About a month ago, Caleb reached out to my parents, apologizing for the pain he caused and thanking them for not reporting him. He claimed he'd hit rock bottom, desperate to clear his debts with no other way out. I didn't buy it. He could have avoided gambling altogether. Still, my parents fell for his emotional plea, forgave him, and welcomed him back into the family. I was against it and subtly tried to warn my dad, but he brushed me off, saying a father forgives his children no matter what. I couldn't argue with that sentiment, so I dropped it. At the time, I was confident they wouldn't be foolish enough to let Caleb back into the business after his betrayal. But at that dinner, my dad declared that Caleb would take over after his retirement, and I lost my cool. Furious, I told them I'd never work under Caleb and would quit if he rejoined the company. My parents tried to calm me, suggesting we could run the business as brothers, but that only made me angrier. I shouted that they were ruining everything and that I don't even see Caleb as family. After my outburst, I stormed out with my wife and kids, and as soon as I got home, I emailed my dad my resignation. I had no job lined up, but I was confident my track record would land me something soon. If not, I could start my own venture with my savings. I discussed it with my wife, who agreed my reaction was warranted. She also said no sensible company would hire someone like Caleb, given his unstable and unreliable history, making it absurd to consider him for CEO. When my parents called to convince me to return, I made it clear I wouldn't unless they guaranteed Caleb would have no role in the company, let alone lead it. They argued that as family, I owed him a second chance, but I refused to listen. After some back and forth, they stopped reaching out, and I accepted their choice. It stung because I'd spent 3 years fixing the mess Caleb left behind. I couldn't fathom why my dad kept him on back then. He clearly lacked business sense, but I suppose my dad didn't want to micromanage or upset him, so he stayed quiet and let Caleb nearly destroy his life's work. Now, he was about to repeat the mistake. Thankfully, Caleb revealed his true intentions last night. My parents called me late, frantic, and after ignoring a few calls, I finally picked up. Through their hysterics, I pieced together that Caleb hadn't returned to make amends. He just needed money. He hadn't quit gambling and was drowning in debt again, fired from multiple jobs with nowhere else to turn. He could only afford a flight to see our parents and beg for help, but unable to disappoint them again, he hid his ongoing struggles. When my parents refused to bail him out with such a massive sum, Caleb threw a fit and left. Realizing their mistake, they called to apologize, admitting I was right about him. They begged me to return, praising my work and insisting I was the only one they trusted to run the business. But after they so easily overlooked my efforts and chose Caleb to take over, I wasn't taking risks. Last night, while they pleaded for me to retract my resignation, I demanded my dad make me CEO immediately, not after his retirement. I wanted the paperwork started this week, unwilling to gamble on their promises. If they refused, I was prepared to walk away. I'd applied to jobs and had enough savings to last a few months. My parents were outraged, insisting it was unfair to force my dad into early retirement. They promised I'd take over eventually, but it was only verbal, so I stood firm. My terms or nothing. I hung up. My mom texted pleading, but I told her they had one day to decide. My wife and I felt it was a fair stance, given the betrayal. But this morning, my mom called, sobbing, explaining that my dad's decision to favor Caleb was driven by nostalgia. Years ago, before Caleb's gambling, he was dedicated, and since I worked elsewhere then, my dad had promised him the business. It was an emotional, not practical choice, and they admitted they should have been more rational. She said my demand for the CEO role now humiliated my dad, as it felt like forcing him out of the company he built. He wasn't ready to retire and didn't want to work under me, but he also didn't want me working elsewhere, as it's a family business. My mom revealed my dad was so upset he'd been drinking heavily and passed out at 4 a.m., blaming himself for everything. She'd never seen him this broken and begged me to fix it. Hearing her misery, I felt conflicted. My wife and I felt guilty but believed standing firm was crucial. Update 1. Thanks for the support. My wife and I decided I'm sticking to my demands. I'm not thrilled about upsetting them, but I've given 3 years to the family business, and if I'm to invest more, I need assurance I'll lead undisputedly. After 3 days of reflection, I decided to return, not for my parents, but because I enjoy the work and my bond with the employees. Starting anew elsewhere or building my own business feels less practical. The only hurdle is my dad's refusal to retire now. He's in his late 50s with years left before he steps down. It's not just about the CEO title, it's about ownership and security as a shareholder. I visited my parents today to stand my ground. They were disheartened, and my dad barely spoke at first. My mom argued I was being greedy, insisting they wouldn't repeat their mistake with Caleb and that my lack of trust was disrespectful. I countered that my dad needed my help 3 years ago to save the business and keep things quiet, not the other way around. That silenced her. My dad admitted he needed my help then and now. I could tell he was emotional, but I firmly reiterated my stance. I explained I'd return because I valued my time at the company and my connection with the team, unlike my previous job. But their announcement about Caleb, without consulting me, was humiliating and made it hard to trust them. I also opened up about feeling sidelined my whole life, especially as a kid, because they prioritized Caleb. When my dad invited Caleb to join the business after college but not me, it was clear where I stood. I only joined 3 years ago hoping to inherit, not out of family loyalty. I told them their past favoritism had consequences, and if they wanted my trust, they had to meet my demands. Otherwise, I was done. My mom apologized, admitting they hadn't realized how neglected I felt. My dad echoed her, acknowledging their mistakes in raising us. It felt validating to hear them admit it. I steered the conversation back to business, pressing for a decision. My dad said he wasn't ready to retire but offered a compromise, a legal contract ensuring I'd take over upon his retirement. We'd have our lawyers review it. I agreed, and that's the plan. Update 2. 2 weeks later, my lawyer reviewed the contract and the terms are acceptable. I'll return to work next week. Professionally, things are set, but personally, we have issues to resolve. Some criticized my decision to return, but it's practical. I have a son in private school, and my wife and I rely on 2 incomes for our lifestyle. I didn't compromise or become a doormat. I got my terms. Since standing up to my parents, they've respected my boundaries more, and our relationship is slowly improving. My goal was the CEO role, and I'm on track, so their personal opinions don't matter much. Update 3. 3 months since my last update, I've been busy since returning to work. My dad and I told the team I was on a brief vacation to avoid questions. Professionally, we work well together, and personally, we're addressing our issues. My family dines with my parents bi-weekly, and my son enjoys his grandparents, which helps. Last week, alone with them, we discussed Caleb. They revealed he's repeatedly asked for money, but they refused, unwilling to enable him anymore. They were upset, as they'd had high hopes for him, given his early promise. I felt a pang of jealousy, but stayed quiet. They expressed regret for neglecting me growing up, which caused our distance. My mom broke down, sobbing, apologizing for being a terrible mother, with my dad admitting he failed as a father. Seeing her so emotional got to me. I usually guard myself emotionally with them, but I admitted they'd messed up, yet I was giving them a chance to fix things. I told my mom not to cry, and we continued dinner, though the mood remained heavy. My dad thanked me for giving them a chance, feeling they'd failed both sons. I agreed they'd enabled Caleb, but he's also responsible as an adult. I told them dwelling on the past helps no one. My wife was glad we're addressing these issues openly, even if the future's uncertain. It's corny, but focusing on the present feels right. I hope our relationship improves, as I don't want to resent them forever. With their current effort and my family's support, I'm optimistic.